Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to continue with talking about table, but we're going to move to pivot table. If you told me what is the most important feature in using Excel, of course there are many important feature in functionality, but I would probably consider pivot table as one of the most important one, especially for decision making. There's so many heavy calculation being done behind the scene. You don't want to even think about the detail that or the hard work that Excel has to go through in order to bring you those answers to your questions. From the previous video, I was able to convert a range into an actual table without having to do anything with pivot table, and I did filter some of the data. I'm going to go ahead and restore that data to the way they were, and by unfiltering anything, I'm going to select all, everything all, select all. So we're going to go ahead and, in this case, make sure that everything is selected. We don't want any filtering. I'm going to go ahead and select all the data back, and I should be able to get 213 a row, even though the data is 212, since the first row is for the label. And I'm going to go ahead and press Control down arrow to take me all the way down. And notice here we have 200. All right, 14. Let me take you all the way up. And this is 200. There's no more filtering. So the data is basically ready to be utilized here. Okay, let me go ahead and see that we have, actually we have 213 row. That's the total, because the first row is being the label. So yeah, you always take away, here we go, we're going to go ahead and say 213, the actual data, by clicking the total row. So it does actually eliminate the header from the count. And I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that, because when we create pivot table, we don't want anything else except the table, header, and the actual data. If you're not happy with this color, we could go ahead and change it to a more pleasant color. Green is good. And we're going to go ahead and start looking at pivot table. Before we start pivot table, we need to look at the data and see what there is to be discovered. What is the type of information and maybe even knowledge that I could dig closely into that type of information. Maybe it could be a hint here or there. So we do have products. We have multiple products. That's basically based on the categories, because category is a bigger word. We have vegetable and fruit, and within the vegetable we have multiple products. Obviously apple is fruit, broccoli is vegetable, so we could go ahead and later show you how to group those together. And we have a transaction or order IDs that is identifying each row by itself. For example, in the order ID 14, we have products broccoli. The category obviously is vegetable, and the amount of purchase is 2,820. And it was made on this date, January the 22nd, 2012, and it was purchased by Canada. So how about if I wanted to go ahead and ask the question, what is the total amount of, or the sum of all the amount that purchased by fruit and vegetables, okay, but I want to show it also by country. So I wanted to see how much United States bought vegetable and fruit, how much Germany bought, how much France, and whatever. I'm not going to really look at every country, because that's the purpose of the whole pivot table, is to show you whatever you need to see. So here we go. Click anywhere on the table, anywhere. As usual, when we deal with object other than the text, we're going to go to insert. So we're going to insert a pivot table, and here we go. It's going to say, what is the table? Of course, we already named it veg fruit or fruit. And I wanted to go ahead and move this into a new worksheet, and I'll actually save it differently later with a different name, and I click on it. Here we go. We got the skeleton for the pivot table. And what we're going to do, first of all, this is basically the area that you're going to see your data being generated by the pivot table. And this is called the field list, this area here, the field list. which is going to allow you to really manage what you will be seeing here. So this is the tools or the control panel or the field list that will allow you to see the data here. Of course, if you click in here, it's going to disappear the field list because we don't have data yet. But when we click on it, click on the pivot table, you're going to see the field list. Of course, you could control the field list from here by showing it or hiding it. You could add more buttons here, field headers, and we could do a lot more, okay? There is one beautiful addition has been done to Excel. It's called recommended pivot table, just recommended charts. We're not going to worry about it this. We're going to worry about later when we talk about we're going to control how we're going to display the type of the calculation. Remember, we had a question in mind. I wanted to show the vegetable and the fruits, which means the categories for each country and the sum associated with those countries. So here we go. We have 4 area here to work. I wanted to get the category is basically must be in the rows, and I'll tell you why it's in the row. I'll convince you. Let's put it that way. And I'm going to go ahead and get the country in the column. And I'm going to get the amount in the value, which is the heart of all our calculation. Look here. So I have fruit and vegetable, and the countries are here. Okay. You will tell me, is this the right way? I said, maybe I was wrong. Actually, I was wrong. I should actually put the country here and put the category here. Look here, if I have the number of the rows bigger than or larger than the number of the columns, then I should switch to, because the country is a lot larger. I was thinking there is more fruits. I was thinking about the actual, what we call the products. I'm not talking about the products. I'm talking about the category is only 2 category. If you have list numbers in the list numbers for that specific what we call criteria here, then use the column, because we have larger number of items for the country than we use the rows. Okay, you will see later when we might doesn't make any difference if we have equal number or close to it. Anyway, notice here we have Australia. It tells me exactly how many the total for the fruits, the vegetables, and their grand total for that country. That's the grand total for every fruit, all the fruits, all the vegetables, and of course, this is the grand total for everything. I mean, you couldn't ask for better calculation in that little time that we spend in order just to drag things around. So again, we could go ahead and change it if you like it this way. That's no big deal. You could see that there's a lot of scrolling to be done, and I don't like it this way personally, because there is it makes more sense to do it this way. All right, so obviously this is going to be looking good. However, this formatting is not really appropriate for money or amount. Please, when you're dealing with a pivot table, don't ever try to go to home and trying to use the typical $, whether accounting or currency associated with typical cells. Pivot table has its own existence, it has its own mind, it has its own tools. So try to focus on using those tools directly from within the pivot table area, which is really the pivot table field here. So how we format this, we're going to click on this arrow or click anywhere in this area, just with the left click, and go to value, field setting. And we're going to go ahead. First of all, I like to change the sum of amount, which is right here, to actually just sum. I don't need to do all this. And notice later we could really do counting, average, max, minimum, product, standard deviation, all the thing that you could really desire. But notice here the number format is what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to go ahead and change it to currency. In case I have negative value, I would like it to be in red color. And of course, this is no, in this table so far is no negative value. And I'm going to click OK. Maybe before I click OK, I don't want to really deal with the 2 decimal points. I'm going to take that for the space purposes. And here we go. Notice, fantastic, beautiful. So if you really wanted to go ahead and do this as bold and all that stuff that goes along with it, that's fine. You could do that. The same thing for the grand total. Anyway, notice when I click here, everything has to do with the pivot table gone. Every time I click on this one here, we're going to get, of course, that 2 sub-ribbon, the analyze the database, the pivot table, and of course the design of the pivot table itself. For example, you'd like to have some sort of coloration, you could immediately change it. And it's really going to be stunning when we're trying to create the dashboard, and you could grab this and put it all together into one dashboard. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue so we don't lose track of this. If you don't want to show the grand total for both of those, no big deal. We could go to the design, and notice here the grand total is going to be off for rows and columns, so it doesn't show anymore. So I'm just concentrating on the total for the fruit pertaining to a certain country and the vegetable for a certain country. And I'm going to warn you, this is going to be a long video, and I don't like to cut it into pieces, maybe not only for a class, for your really business or career in the future. So it's going to help you a great deal. For example, if I got interested in order to see what kind of transaction took in order to get all this amount, the $91,221 for the fruit pertaining to the country Australia, there's nothing to it. You click on it twice, and it shows you all the transaction in a separate sheet. So now you could see the sheet. I could rename it. I could say here, transaction from Australia. And that as easy as this. And you could do that for any piece of data that you want. Of course, and I'm going to delete that. If I want to see United States, how did we become actually the largest consumer of fruit in this case, you could click on it here and notice that this is all the transaction associated with the United States. Of course, I could delete, or I could print, I could rename it, I could keep it, whatever is the business problem required from me to do. So this is the very first easy type of pivot table that we have seen. And obviously you could do a lot more by adding, but I'm going to limit it to this one, and I'll go ahead and create another one. What about if I wanted to find the products, which has to do with a lot of other lists, and also I'm going to look for the country along with the products. So let's go ahead and start and go back to the pivot table, and I'm going to click anywhere here. I'm going to insert. I'm going to get another pivot table, and I'm going to go ahead and get it into a new worksheet. Here we go. And now we have another one. I could rename it if I want right away by calling it products. It's very helpful to products and country, and I could go ahead and change name if the requirement changed subtly. And I click here. I'm going to go ahead and country. We have a large list of country. If I put it in the rows, okay, that's fine. Notice here the products also is a large one. So it's up to you in this case whether you want it to put, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's fine. They're almost the same, so you could switch them back and forth if you want. Of course, we need the amount here directly. And notice this is really a lot of information directly pertaining to this. I'm going to click on this one here, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the value field setting, and I'm going to change that to dollar figure. Here we go. Okay, so notice how easy it is, and if I wanted to go to the view, go ahead and make it 200% so it will be able to see it better. And notice that we have, of course, cells that are not showing due to the fact that I have larger numbers than the width of them. And notice here, if we're talking about this one here, there is no mangoes eaten or purchased by in New Zealand, you know, and the same thing, the carrot. Obviously, they don't like the beans as well. And here we have Canada did not buy beans or carrot as well. So this is the grand total. You know, it gives us a lot of information directly. But that's not limited to what we see here. If I go ahead and drag the category directly here, you know, look what happens. We have actually fruit and vegetable for every country that it shows. Probably I would do it differently from this. I would go ahead and put the category here, but I would put the products under the categories. Why is that? Because actually I could do it even better by taking the country here and taking the category here and the products here. Why the product should be under the category? Because the category is the mother of the products. The category comes first. We have fruit and vegetable, and we have, based on the fruit and the vegetable, we have the products. So make sure that if you have, for example, the countries and states, you put the country on the top and the state at the bottom. If you have state and cities, you put the state on the top and the city in the bottom. Look how ugly it is if I really put the categories under the products. You know, it gets really very confusing. You know, so I would like to go ahead and switch those, and it's very easy to switch it. You know, just like it's so easy to remove something by dragging it to the white area here. Here we go. It's so easy to go ahead and put the products here, okay, and put the category here. You see how it's going to look really unattractive. So you could go ahead and put the products under the category, and it gives you really a very pleasant view screen here. Of course, because of the view is too large, I could go ahead and make it 150, and it should really looks very good. Here we go. So now we have really multiple criteria here. We have the category, and I'm seeing fruits, apple, makes really very nice looking grouping, and the beans and the broccoli and the carrot, and it shows me the grand total for each one, all the countries, and so forth.